With us right now, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, on what he thinks those maybe Republican lawyers have to do to help out their client Donald Trump after all of this. Senator, good to have you. If
Thanks,
you were
Sam.
advising those lawyers, what would you tell Mr. Castor, Mr. Schoen, what would you tell them to do?
I would capitalize on something extraordinary that the House impeachment managers admitted. They admitted that President Trump was not impeached for his words. This is sort of extraordinary because I'm not sure how you incite someone to insurrection or to this violence they say he's alone responsible for if it's not through his words. They finish up by saying, well, it's not through his words, it's because he advocated that the election was stolen. Well, so has Nancy Pelosi said that the election was hijacked. So has Hillary Clinton in 2016. So has Jamie Raskin, the lead House impeachment manager, went to the floor in 2017 and said Trump stole the election, and I am objecting to seating the certified electors from Florida. So both sides have done this, and the fact that they're admitting that they're not impeaching him for his words, because frankly they said that his words weren't much different than the words of Democrats. So really, I think they've given up their case, but they showed endless hours of the terrible violence and mayhem, and those people should be punished. And on both sides of the aisle, we agree to that, but they never made their case that the president incited them through any kind of unusual language that Democrats, frankly, haven't done much worse.
You know, Senator, you're in a special case dealing with this sort of thing because you and your wife were stuck in the middle of a crowd right after the end of the Republican convention happening at the White House, and then protesters, they damn near harmed you. So you have a special vantage point on this. So do you think that the president's provocative language, and that might be a kind way of saying it, and to storm the Capitol and to join them and things like that, well, maybe not intentionally envisaging breaking into the Capitol and getting into the well of the House, that he should have known better, that his actions unleashed this violence or might have provoked it, maybe unintentionally. And his response afterwards was so slow and tentative that it looked like he really didn't care. So forget about whether it's worthy of conviction. Is it worthy of outrage and criticism that that type of president, that kind of man should never look for running for any office again?
I think we all bear responsibility for our words, and I think he will be judged harshly by that final battle. You know, I voted against what the president called for, not to seat the electors. I disagreed with what Jamie Raskin did to Trump in 2016. I disagreed to what Barbara Boxer did to George Bush in 2004. But what I will say about the words is, it is important that we have the same standard for both sides. Yes, I think he will be judged harshly for that final riot and for all of that. But if you want to say, did he incite a riot, we would have to ask, did Bernie Sanders, does he hold responsibility for the shooter that came to the ball field when I was there, when people were shot 10 feet from me, when Steve Scalise almost died, and the guys yelling, this is for health care, after Democrats came forward and said the Republican health care plan was you get sick and then you die. I never once said Bernie Sanders was responsible for the near killing of Steve Scalise, and yet every Democrat has jumped on board and said the president is directly responsible for what these crazy people did when they invaded the Capitol. So, no, I think if we're going to hold politicians responsible for intemperate, inflammatory language, it has to be the same standard. We can't have one standard for President Trump and a different standard for Bernie Sanders or Kamala Harris or Maxine Waters.
I understand what you're saying, Senator, but should we have at least a slightly different standard for the president? He timed that January 6th rally on the very day they were going to confirm the electoral vote, knowing full well the tensions would be high and that a march on the Capitol, and I'll give the president the benefit of the doubt to your point, sir, that the intention was never to storm in the Capitol, maybe just storm outside the Capitol, but storm nonetheless. And the timing was curious, to put it mildly, that this was the type of thing that was akin to lighting a powder keg and seeing the results.
Right. The reason we have to be fair about this is that had this rally happened at that time, it did happen at that time because he was protesting what we were doing. Had it been peaceful, everybody would have looked the other way. But you wouldn't organize a rally when nothing's happening. You organize a rally, and like I say, I disagreed with the president. I voted to seat the electors because I think that we should not overturn state-certified elections, even though I have problems with what happened in many of the states, and I'm still trying to fix it. I voted against that. But the thing is to say the president is responsible for what every crazy person in the country does, what crazy people do, and this is the same thing. Look, Chuck Schumer was in front of a mob that attacked the Supreme Court. We're just lucky no one was killed over there. Had someone been killed, Chuck Schumer would be in the same position that the president's in. So the difference between the president and Chuck Schumer is Chuck Schumer got lucky that his crowd wasn't that big and wasn't as violent, but they did bang on the doors of the Supreme Court. They threw food at the Supreme Court justices, scared them half to death as they chased them out of the building. So yes, both sides are guilty of this. Our cities have been burning for 6 months, and not one Democrat says a word. I'm willing to condemn what happened at the Capitol, but I'm still waiting for the first Democrat to condemn any of the violence that's happened in their cities. Kamala Harris was busy bailing out the people committing crimes in Minneapolis. She helped bail out one guy 3 times, who the last time he got bailed out by the Minnesota Freedom Fund, cracked some guy's head open again and caused a fracture and a brain bleed. That's what the other side's doing. No one's blaming them for that violence, and it actually would be unfair to say it's their fault. But let's have the same standard. Let's not have a double standard here.
All right. Let me ask you finally, Senator. I don't know, and you're closer to this than I am, whether there are enough votes, 17 Republicans, to either follow their conscience, as Mitch McConnell says, to convict the president. But do you think that the House managers here, that wasn't their goal? Their goal was to show this video, a lot of it new video, leave such a searing impression in voters' minds, and millions of them watching in and out these hearings. And that's good enough. They will remember that and remember that Donald J. Trump has no right even considering running for any elective office ever again.
I guess when I see the video, my take is that we should condemn violence and extremism on both sides. For 6 months, our cities have been on fire because of extreme left-wing anarchists, and now we had right-wing people who have shown that it can be just as crazy. So anybody who commits violence should be, kicked out of polite society, should be punished, should go to jail. The people who perpetrated this should go to jail. But I can tell you that the people creating mayhem and would have physically attacked my wife and I, and were at the very least disorderly and not obeying commands, not one of them even got a traffic ticket. So, let's have the same standard. And when the mobs are running through our cities, burning, throwing Molotov cocktails at the police, arrest every damn one of them. The people who invaded the Capitol on January 6th, arrest them, fine them, put them in jail if they committed violence. But it needs to be both sides. It can't be this this is all about Republicans and violence, and we look away from what's happened in our cities for the last 6 months.
Senator Rand Paul, I remember that very well. With you and your wife, glad you came out of that okay. That was scary stuff.
Thank you.